Did you know that about 100 years ago, all of those chronic diseases that we have nowadays, like diabetes, like obesity, like Alzheimer, like cancer, like all of those other diseases, pretty much didn't exist? Like nowadays, on the other hand, 60% of or more of the US population has one or more of those kinds of chronic diseases. Now, doesn't that sound as crazy to you as it does to me, knowing that 60% of the US population has a chronic disease nowadays, even though 100 years ago they pretty much didn't exist? Like, for example, let's take diabetes. 100 years ago, 0.000 something percent of the population had diabetes. Nowadays, about 10 to 15%, bro. 10 to 15%. What about obesity? 100 years ago, 1% of the population was obese. Nowadays, it's about 40 to 50%, bro. Now, those numbers sound very crazy, at least to my ears. But now you maybe ask yourself, okay, why should I even care in the first place, right? I'm not here telling you what you should or shouldn't do, but very simply, if you want to be healthy, or if you at least don't want to be unhealthy, then what I realize on myself is that probably I don't want to be following and copying very unhealthy people, right? And I think that the average American is a good example of how I don't want to be eating. Now, if you are American, don't take this as an insult, but very simply, what I've seen is that the average Americans are very unhealthy, and I don't want to be eating like them, right? But why is that they are so unhealthy? Because they're actually following the guidelines of of what they're being told to eat. They're following the food pyramid. They're following all of those other guidelines of they're eating what they're being told to eat, right? But guess what? I asked myself, how is it possible that they are so unhealthy? It was probably because they're being fed so many lies. We're all being fed so many lies about nutrition and about the way we should be living our life. And it became clear to me when I just looked at the fact that since we were following these guidelines, we became much more unhealthy, because we should actually be the most healthy and most evolved society that has ever lived on this planet, right? We have the most scientific research, we have the most knowledge, but guess what? We're the most unhealthy and most sick society, because we're being told so many bullshit things. At least that is what I think. And so let's take a few examples, because I don't want to just talk about hot air, right? Let's take the food pyramid. I personally have been eating like that since the day I was born, to be very honest. Like, probably not the day I was born, but since I was a very little kid, because at least also in elementary school, I remember I had been told that was the way I should be eating. So I was eating that way. But then I realized that the food pyramid, I actually realized this quite late, that the food pyramid was actually not invented by scientists, as I thought, or by nutritionists, right? Or by doctors. No. It was invented by the US Department of Agriculture. And how strange is it that the US Department of Agriculture is telling us that we should be eating a lot of grains, right? Very strange, very strange. Now, what I realized was that the food pyramid was probably a big marketing thing, right? The US Department of Agriculture were not scientists, were not doctors, were not nutritionists, they were businessmen, marketers trying to understand how to make more money, very down to earth, right? And we are all told to eat that way. And guess what happened? 60% of the US population has some kind of chronic disease, even though they're probably all following that food pyramid. Now, that was the first thing that I thought, wow, like, this is crazy. Another thing is seed oils. Now, you have to know that we have been eating seed oils since about 100 years, something like that, maybe 110 years, because the first seed oil was actually called Crisco, was invented in 1911, and we have been eating more and more of those seed oils since then. But guess what? Before, we didn't eat that way. We didn't eat those kinds of fats. We were eating animal fats, saturated fats, cholesterol, Since the day we came down from a tree, basically as a monkey, like since the beginning of humanity, we have been eating those kinds of saturated fats, animal fats. But then 100 years ago, someone invented those seed oils. And I will come to how they were invented in just a minute. And now we have switched over to that. We are being told that saturated fats, cholesterol is bad for us, even though we have been literally eating it since the beginning of humanity. And now we're eating those seed oils. But what are seed oils? Seed oils are pretty much the most processed thing that we could be eating. They have to undergo so many mechanical and chemical processes that it's literally like gross just to think about it. They have to take out the smell of those seed oils because of how bad they smell when they're produced. But how were they invented, right? They were used in the First World War as basically lubricants for ships and other machines that were used in war. But then as soon as the war ended, all of those industries that were producing a lot of seed oils thought to themselves, what the fuck? Who do we sell the seed oils now? Like, we are going to lose a lot of money. So what did they do? They just thought themselves, we just sell them as food. But as I said, they were smelling like shit and no one would have eaten them. So they had to do some other chemical stuff. And then they sold this Crisco cottonseed oil, just thinking about it, like cottonseed oil. The seeds that are literally used to make this t-shirt have some oil in them that I should be eating. What the fuck is that? Just that thing like sounds crazy to me. Now, since then, we have been eating more and more and more of those seed oils because we have been told that those saturated fats are bad for us, even though seed oils pretty much didn't exist earlier than 100 years ago and the most processed thing that you could be eating. But we're being told that cholesterol is bad for us. Now, I didn't do a lot of research about cholesterol, to be very honest, but what I found, and what you can find very simply, is that every single cell of your body, or pretty much every single cell of your body, has cholesterol. 20% of your brain is made out of cholesterol, and cholesterol is so important to your body that it literally produces it by itself. Now, even if you don't eat enough cholesterol, your body will produce cholesterol by itself because of how important it is. Even if you eat enough cholesterol, your body will create even more. Now, how is it possible that we are being told then that cholesterol is so bad for us? If it is literally in every single cell of our body and 20% of our brain is made out of that, I ask myself, bro, how is it fucking possible? Obviously, because we had to be sold that lie that we should be eating, cottonseed oil and other seed oils, all of that marketing bullshit. Now, I don't want to bore you any longer with other conspiracy theories or things like that, but very simply, what I realized in the last weeks is that very probably, if I just eat the opposite of a US American, I will probably not do any wrong thing, right? Because an US American is following the food pyramid. They're eating a lot of seed oils, they're eating a lot of processed things, a lot of processed sugar, a lot of fast food, and very little whole natural foods. Now, what I realized is that probably, at least that is my guess, if I want to be healthy, trying to find the best diet, ketogenic diet, vegan diet, carnivore diet, animal-based diet, like all of those diets, that's probably not the most important thing. If I just eliminate all of those bullshit things that we pretty much were not eating 100 years ago, of that processed sugar, all of that processed fast food and all of processed like seed oils and other processed foods, if I just eliminate all of those bullshit things and I just eat whole foods, then I will probably be ahead of 99% of people when it comes to my diet. Now, that is what I realized, but as I said, I'm not a nutritionist, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist. That is just what I realized by looking at the data, the fact that US Americans are pretty much the most unhealthy society that exists out there, and they're following the food pyramid. They're eating a lot of seed oils, a lot of processed things, and very little natural whole foods. So if I just do the opposite, I just eat pretty much only whole natural foods, I will probably not end up like them, right? If you don't want to get what they get, don't do what they do, right? If you want to get what they don't get, do what they don't do, right? That is the thought behind of it. So very simply, if you want to implement this video, I have a few implementable steps for you, and it's actually quite simple. The one framework that I think is the most important one: just eat the opposite of a US of the average US American, because there are many US Americans that are actually very healthy. This is not an insult for Americans, but it's just a matter of facts, and it's as simple as that. So if you also want to go into more detail about seed oils and all of those kinds of bullshit lies that we have been told, I will put the link of a very interesting documentary that I've watched just last week about seed oils. It's called Fed a Lie, and it's very, very interesting. If you want to check it out and understand more of what I've just touched, in this video, you will have it down there. Anyways, I wish you a healthy life. I wish you all the best. I hope that this video helped you out. Yeah, see you in the next video.